Hey folks, and welcome to Fireside Farms. I've had a lot of new faces lately, so for those of you that don't know me, this is Freya. My name is Megan, and I live on a 1.5 acre homestead in southwest New Mexico. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I've dealt with in the past, and this is mostly geared towards beginning homesteaders because I also am one. And it's something that's caused me a little bit of stress. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about planning for abundance. So there are many reasons that people get into homesteading. It could be for self-sufficiency, sustainability, political, cultural reasons, just a love of good, homegrown, real food. And really my decision for homesteading is all of the above. And I love working outside, I love working with animals, I love putting my hands in the dirt. But personally, I think there is one drive that really connects all homesteaders, no matter what phase of homesteading you are in or where you ever finally want to be, and that is just a love of good, healthy food. Whether you're starting a small garden on a backyard patio or you already own 40 acres in a cattle ranch somewhere in Wyoming, the one thing that connects all of these people, all of us who desire to live this kind of life, is just a genuine love of food. Taking a step back from these commercially processed food items that exist nowadays and cultivating something with your bare hands and then bringing it to your table and putting it on a plate, that is an act of love. Now, I got into homesteading for many reasons, but what I started with was a tiny 8x4 raised bed. That was all I had at the very beginning when I bought this property, and it's now turned into about 2,400 square feet of garden. I have 10 laying hens, 2 roosters, and we now raise Cornish cross chickens twice yearly to raise all of our own chicken that we need for the year. And as this farm grows in the future, and if and when we do decide to move to a larger piece of property, my dreams and hopes are going to grow with that, so that one day I can hopefully raise a majority of the food that we consume right here, right where we live. And once you start growing, you start harvesting a lot. And with all of that abundance comes a lot of responsibility. Before you know it, the single tomato plant turns into 16 and a couple backyard chickens turns into you hatching your own eggs several times a year. And suddenly you're staring at your dining room table full of food that you just harvested, wondering, what are you gonna do with all of this? And this passion just gets overwhelming pretty quickly. Now, I believe that anyone who's ever raised their own food or grown something in a garden is way more appreciative of that final product on their table versus the same thing that you can buy on the supermarket shelves. And then the last thing you want to do with all of that hard work, those months you spent growing that tomato, or all of the money you put into those meat birds or pigs or cattle, the last thing you want to do is throw it away or let it go to waste because you're just overwhelmed with how much you have. So what I want to talk about today is having a plan so that you don't become overwhelmed and stressed with all the abundance once you finally get to have it. So I'm going to be talking a lot today about food preparation. Now, beyond just food prep like canning and all the like that, abundance can absolutely be dealt with in other ways, such as food donations to your local food pantry, selling it at a market, selling it with a local CSA, just giving it away to family and friends, which I do a lot of, or even feeding it to your animals to offset the cost to feed. But when it comes to growing your own food, if you don't have a way to deal with it, having a lot of food waste is unproductive, and it's a time suck, and it's unsustainable. Now, what do I mean by preparation that I'm talking about today? Well, it covers the traditional methods of food preservation, such as canning, dehydrating, freezing, but it also requires a knowledge of rotating your food, knowing when things go bad, ensuring that the things that you do have stored maintain their quality and freshness, and just generally being equipped with knowledge so that you know how to deal with all of this food that you have. And that means you'll need to do some research on food prepping, different preservation methods, and even a little experimentation to find out how you like your food to be stored. For example, I had a massive harvest of greens from my hydroponics grow tower this winter. And when it came harvest time and pounds of fresh herbs and lettuces were sprawled all over my kitchen table, I was faced with the realization that I had no idea what to do with it all. So into the Google machine I went. I learned all different kinds of methods of herb preservation. I learned that parsley is best frozen in oil or water, and that honestly it's better freeze-dried instead of air-dried because it just loses quality and flavor pretty quickly. Unfortunately, I don't have a freeze dryer, but that's neither here nor there. And I learned that a great healthy greens powder can be made from dehydrated kale and arugula, so I can put it into my morning smoothies. But the problem was, I was doing all of that after I harvested my grow tower. And I was on a time crunch to get these fresh, good veggies and herbs preserved because I had no idea what to do with them. And eggs, don't get me started on eggs. Do you know how many recipes I had to look up just to deal with the almost dozen eggs I'm getting daily after we decided to get more hens this year? Of course, I give away tons of eggs to friends and family, and even, you know, to coworkers. I'll sell them super cheap, like $3 a dozen. But I also work for those eggs. You know, I pay for the feed. I go out and take care of those chickens every day. And that's a lot of good, healthy food that I want to be able to use up, not just give away because I don't know what to do with it. So to make that money, time, and effort and love I put into those hens carry as far as possible on this homestead, I try and cook with eggs as much as I can. I've since learned how to make Dutch baby pancakes and crepes and awesome quiches that even the kids will like. How to salt egg yolks to preserve them longer, and then use those leftover egg whites to make this cool thing called cloud bread. I even researched them as dog food to be able to cut down on the amount of kibble I buy. And there are of course other methods of preserving eggs, such as freeze drying, but like I said, I don't have a freeze dryer, and water glassing, which I have not tried, but there are a ton of videos on YouTube to check out if you're interested in something like that. And for those of you that buy ingredients in bulk, like I do, those things have to be rotated out. Herbs and medicines lose their potency and effectiveness over time. Ingredients will go stale and rancid. They lose flavor, color, nutrient value, and sometimes after a year you just have to be out with the old and in with the new. I have medicinal herbs that I harvest and preserve every year so that I have a supply all winter when I can't grow them. But I do grow them every year, so I prefer to rotate out the old ones, which have lost some of their properties over the span of several months. And then I start fresh every year with the new herbs that I grow in my garden, and the process begins all over again. Of course, the old ones aren't wasted and either become chicken food or compost, and you can even extend their life by making tinctures or freeze drying them. But my point is, it's ideal for these things to be considered before they're staring you in the face in spring with 20 other things on your to-do list. And when we started raising our own meat chickens last year, I realized that there's a lot of the chicken I don't want to eat. You know, the bones, the offal, the inner organs, the feathers, obviously. But when you're weighing that out and all of the time and effort you put into growing those chickens, you've got about 2 to 3 pounds of product that you don't just want to toss because you put so much into it. And that's a lot of the percentage of the chicken that you got. So I learned how to make dog treats out of organs. They absolutely love them. And I consistently make bone broth out of chicken bones. And that's just not out of any bones that we may, you know, get rid of during the processing of those chickens. But even after I roast a whole chicken, I will use that leftover bone and meat to make broth from that. I've searched on Facebook Marketplace, and I've had several people on Facebook Marketplace want chicken feathers because they do crafts and projects with them. And then of course, there are certain things that no one's gonna eat or do anything with it, even the dogs don't want, or maybe you don't want to feed them to your animals. That's still not waste. All of the parts of the chicken that aren't used become compost. I don't really like to put a whole bunch of like raw, you know, chicken heads and things in my actual compost because I use my compost so often it wouldn't break down that quickly. But I do dig large holes in my yard, bury that stuff there, and then it becomes food for my fruit trees. And once you have that knowledge base or experience, that huge abundance, those baskets and baskets of food and vegetables on your table isn't a burden anymore. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to provide the maximum amount of nutrients to your family and yourself on your homestead, or to give back to your homestead in other ways, like compost. You're making the most out of every dime you've spent, out of every minute you've put into it. And then you're taking that time and effort and you're putting it back into the homestead instead of throwing it out with the Sunday garbage. But the last thing you want to be doing is trying to learn all of these things, attempting these things, or researching all of this while you're sitting at your kitchen table staring at 30 pounds of peppers and 20 pounds of tomatoes and like 6 dozen eggs. That could be super stressful, and it's a time crunch, especially if, like me, you have a full-time job. And it can be stressful to a point where you just want to throw your hands up and give up the whole thing altogether, which is not the way to go. And I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I hope I'm not coming across that way. I'm passionate about this because I've gone through it, especially in this last year when I quit my old career and then was able to be home more and expand this garden and expand the homestead. And then I was faced with all of this abundance, and I was like, what do I do? What I want to do is encourage you to, do this research and experiment new things before that period in your life of amazing abundance. And this really goes out to beginning homesteaders, because we're right in the thick of it. Like right before I just ramp up and get a bunch of pigs and get 40 meat birds. That's the time to be learning how you like your chicken cooked. What are the best ways to preserve all those peppers that you have? And for those of you not even in that space yet, you actually have the best advantage. There are so many different ways of preservation, and unfortunately last year I had just pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of peppers, and the largest way that I knew to preserve them was dehydration and freezing. And there are so many other ways. I did a little bit of fermenting, but I did all these methods, and I decided over the course of using them this last winter, decided there were a lot of methods I didn't like. I didn't like some of the peppers I dehydrated. I didn't like them when they were reconstituted. And I would have much preferred to ferment most of those peppers than the method I currently have them preserved with. So knowing those things beforehand obviously you have less stress, but also I have less waste, because now I have jars and jars of dehydrated peppers that do not taste very good when they're reconstituted, and I'm gonna have to give them to the chickens, which is not a total waste in itself, but it would have been a lot cooler if they went in my belly, not the chickens' bellies. But abundance is amazing, and whether you're not there yet or you are there, it's just a fantastic feeling to carry in baskets and baskets of food from the garden every day. And I want to encourage you guys to prepare for that abundance before you're scrambling to deal with it all. I hope this helped some of you guys, and thank you for joining me, and I will catch you on the next one.